Hello guys and welcome back to TNT Madness. Today we're going to be looking at something that's extremely practical for when you're building a faction base, and that is the anti-hybrid cannon / sand stacker walls. So essentially what this does is when someone fires sand or anything like that at the wall, like let's say you have a hybrid cannon where you have the sand inside the TNT or the TNT inside the sand, whichever way you like to say it, this will catch the sand so that way it cannot be used. So what I mean by that is it'll stay as a falling entity, so it won't go as a solid block. So that way it does not have the effect where the TNT is inside a solid block, so it actually destroys the blocks around it. It'll catch it so that way it can't actually be used. Also, this stops sand stackers, can't say that word right for some reason, because what happens is the sand catches it, and then if it's a large amount of sand, then it'll just fall onto the slabs that are down here below and break, instead of actually stacking. And the reason that the slabs are so low down is so when the TNT does explode, if for some reason it does explode with the sand on it, in the very, very unlikely circumstance that it does, it will not actually destroy your wall of cobwebs and iron. Or in my case it's just iron, it can really be anything. So that's pretty much the basic principle, so that's really it. Okay guys, so now I'm going to explain the fundamentals of this. So the first one we actually have is a giant checkerboard pattern of both cobwebs and solid blocks. And the reason for this is if you were to have a transparent display, like let's say every block was cobwebs, then it would stop the sand, but it wouldn't stop the TNT. And so that way they'd probably pretty much just have one less defense because they could fire it straight through and they'd have no problems whatsoever. And also the reason it's a checkerboard pattern instead of actual just a normal flat line followed by another flat line is because if somehow they blew up the cobwebs, then it wouldn't blow up the ones behind it because they'll be protected by solid blocks. And also if it fires inside this block, it won't destroy this block. That's just the way it works, which means it takes longer for them to actually get through your defenses. And another reason it's like this is the cobwebs are right up against the block is because if the sand, for some reason, when the sand hits the cobwebs, it'll just hit the block, stop it in its tracks, and then fall down either on here, or yeah, that's pretty much all it'll do, or it'll take forever and ever and ever and ever for it to actually fall down onto here. So that's the only reason it's against a block. Or else pretty much they'd have a transparent display. And another thing is it has got a giant layer of water over it. So the next thing we actually have is this giant slab thing on top. So the only reason for this actual layer of slabs is because if we have them up like this, then when the sand hits it, it will just break. And this is a really, really easy way to stop things like slab busters. And the reason water's on top is of course so if the water does hit in the cobwebs, it can stop the TNT like a water wall. Sometimes, very, very rarely, the TNT will actually hit inside this block, which happened in my testing like 1 in 20 times or something like that, and it can blow this up, but that's very, very rarely, and I wouldn't worry. It's also another reason it's in a checkerboard pattern, because if it was on the side, then it would just hit the water and blow up. So now we are onto the bottom bit, and this bottom bit here just consists of a layer of slabs with more water coming down. And the reason this is so far from the actual wall itself is if the TNT falls down and it blows up in here, somehow if the sand inside it, let's say you had a sand stacker and then it all fell and then you fired the TNT perfectly, then it would blow up in here, but it wouldn't affect anything up here because it would just blow up the slabs. And also the reason the slabs are here is of course to stop sand stackers because they can't go down to the ground, and that's the whole purpose of sand stackers. And yeah, that's really the only other reason apart from that. And also the reason there's water along here too is so it can work as a bottom water wall, of course, and since the sand is falling down onto these slabs, it'll break the sand and yeah, they'll just have a really rotten time. So also the final thing I'd like to say is the way I'd recommend you use this wall is you have got your main base somewhere in the distance with all your walls around it, and then you can have your middle wall, which will be your, let's say, regen walls, and then you'll have this on the outside where you can actually stop the sand, which can be your first defense, and then have your mightier defenses beyond that. So enough of me rambling. I'm pretty sure you've all know how this works by now, so let's actually get on with the tutorial. So now onto the tutorial. So we're going to actually be making this a 3x5 area because the finished you can actually make this is 3 blocks long. Of course the thicker it is, the more defensive it's going to be, but the finish you're going to make it is going to be 3 blocks. And believe me, if you even add the 3 block layer on top of your normal walls, you will see a significant increase in defense. It'll be a lot harder for people to raid you, because I'm not saying that everyone's not experienced on factions, but most of the people that know factions use basic hybrid cannons, and this will stop them in their tracks. So anyway, you're going to need some building blocks for no particular reason other than pillaring around, just because it's easier than slabs. Some cobwebs, of course, because that's the main thing. You also need building blocks to build inside the cobwebs, but you can use slabs, of course, and slabs for the bottom and the top, and you'll need water to put on the bottom and the top. So the first thing you're going to need is just a 3x5 area, and that's all we're going to be building in this tutorial. So the first thing we're going to do is place our cobwebs. So be aware, it doesn't really matter where you place your cobweb, but where you place it, it's going to dictate how you're going to build the rest of your build, because there are 2 options really. So let's say we placed our cobweb in the middle, then we're going to repeat it as a checkerboard pattern by placing our cobwebs here, 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 and here, and we're just going to ignore the back exists because we are not going to be getting attacked from the back, so we are going to destroy these front 3 blocks, and then behind that we're going to place our blocks like so. And this will create the effect that you actually have things going along here. Technically you don't need these cobwebs here if you just want to save space, but it will help just because in case somehow sand gets trapped in there. So before we actually build these up, the first thing we want to actually do is go down by 8 blocks, so 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then here we want to place down a slab that is facing the same way a slab will, and then you just want to destroy the scaffolding blocks you had before, and then you can just place a little 3x5 slab thing under it, so that way it can catch all the water. You technically don't need any more blocks than the ones placed under it, so let's say you don't need one here, but I just like having it because it's a lot easier to build in actual real time. So now that we've got that, we will place water on it later, but the next thing we'll need to do is just place up these blocks as high as your wall is going to be. So now that we have all this built, the next thing we're going to do is we are going to build our actual thing here, just cover every single block with a slab, and this way it'll just protect it from everything on top. So the next thing we can do is place our water on top. Also, just one quick little tip is if you're playing on a server and you want to prevent lag when you're loading up your base, if you do have sponges on the server that you're playing on, you can actually place sponges under here and create like a wall, because it'll catch the actual water. I can't do it on vanilla because it doesn't work that way, but it'll just prevent lag, because as you could see earlier in when I was doing this starting record, I got some frame drops, and that's why I had to do lots of cuts because it created a lot of lag, and I don't know if it's a problem with my computer or fraps, I don't really know, but that's just a wee tip. So the next thing I want to do is just fill up all these spaces here with water, so that way when the sand fires down and somehow the TNT lands on here, it doesn't blow up the slabs, because that would just be a bad day. So that is pretty much it. It's not too bad of a wall, but if you're building a very large one, it can take an awful long time, so be aware of that. So anyway, that is pretty much everything done, so now hopefully you've learned a new concept that will increase your defenses on your base exponentially. So yeah, that's pretty much it, so happy raiding. But anyway, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, leave a like. If you want to see 2 videos a week, you'll be notified if you hit that subscribe button. But anyway, goodbye from TNT Madness.